Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Sales Scoop. This is a weekly live show for tech business founders who want to accelerate their sales. I'm Alistair Cole, your host for today. I have a degree in artificial intelligence and 2 decades experience in sales and marketing. And I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by Louise Ballard, who is a co-founder of Atheni.ai. Hi, Louise. Good afternoon.
Of course, the mute button. It catches you out every time. So yes, hello, Alistair. How are you?
I'm very good. It's great to have you here this afternoon. Really excited about our discussion.
Yes.
We share a lot of similar interests in AI and background in communications as well,
Yep.
which is great. Before we get into your sales scoop, could you tell us a little bit about you and your journey to get to Atheni.ai?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's as a middle-aged woman in AI, it's often a question that people are quite interested in, how I kind of got here in the end. And my background was communications. I've spent 30 years working in communications, kind of on and off, starting, funnily enough, as a teacher, working out in Austria a long time ago, and then into communications in banking and in PR agencies. And then I had my own PR agency in the noughties, which I went on to sell to Huntsworth. And then took time out. And this is, I think, an interesting point as well when it comes to AI, which is that AI is classified as a tech. Absolutely, it is a tech. It's a tech under the bonnet. But as soon as generative AI came out in 2022, I became completely fascinated. And it felt like what happened is that it brought all my experience together and allowed me to really harness everything that I'd learned, all those different types of experiences that I'd had through my career. And we, and I became passionate about it. So that's kind of the journey to kind of where we started. And then I met up with my co-founder, who had been a client actually at a previous, at the agency that I had,
Yeah.
so 15 years ago. And she was coming at it from the skills perspective. I was coming at it being a kind of, this is an enabler of humans. She was coming at it as from a skills perspective, which was, the human skills that we're going to require going into the future are changing, have changed. And we need to make sure that education and skills training keep up with that. So that's how we kind of came on AI, and we started helping businesses to figure out how they could integrate it into their business. And we realized more and more it was a mindset shift. It was much more to do with mindset than the technology. The technology is all here, but how do you get people to trust it, to try it, to use it, to take things that they have done in one way for 20, 30 years and do it in a different way? And that's how we came up with Atheni.ai. So it almost should be like someone sitting next to you, telling you the use cases, helping you to use it. So that's how I've got here. So a bit of an interesting route.
Yeah, like fascinating, much like myself in terms of communications, and now in a more recently in a kind of like heavily AI focused and tech role. And you were sharing just before we went live about what's happening, what the very latest is with Atheni and what's in the news now. Give us an update on that.
Yeah. So we started, I think what we've realized, and this is when you look back and you listen to some of the speeches of some of the leaders in Silicon Valley about AI, you realize that what AI actually is a huge facilitator of humans and domain expertise. That's what Jensen Huang says from NVIDIA, is that suddenly it's democratized. You don't need to know how to code anymore because it has democratized the way that you do things. And that's exactly what we realized when we realized we needed to create a coach or an assistant or someone that sat next to people. We were in the position, and Mackenzie, my co-founder, has worked in tech before, but she's not a techie in the same way. We were able to be, right at the front, and we are actually, interestingly, right at the front of some of the experimentation that's going on using generative AI models to create products. And it's kind of called the application layer. It sits on top of the LLMs. And so we have created a platform which will allow people to learn how to use generative AI as they are working. So it creates a personalized configuration for them, which means it knows exactly who you are, what your job is, how you like to learn. And at the same time, by using AI, we're able to create use cases that are 100% tailored to you, to your role, to your job. We've created a prompt engine, which takes that whole, am I asking it the right thing? Oh, it's not really done what I've wanted. It takes that away. And we've created some sort of small instructional videos using AI just to make it super easy. Because the trouble with current training is that it's out of date as soon as you've done it. It's out of date and it's not relevant. And this technology is a very different type of technology than anything we've had before, which came top down. This actually has to come bottom up and side to side. And the best examples where it is integrated, it's where team leaders say, you go and try, you go and experiment, and people are able to find the use cases. But that's quite slow. So we're trying to accelerate that. So we launch our new platform hopefully next week, and we're out fundraising.
Okay, that's very exciting. And seeing as you just mentioned it, where should people go? Where should they go to?
Go to Atheni.ai. Right now, it's a very clunky site, which is just will provide you with a configuration for your ChatGPT. You fill out a few questions. Hopefully, in the next week or so, that will be the full platform. So this is kind of what we're likely to be doing. You'll be able to have your different tools. You'll be able to see what you've achieved. And the biggest gap that we're seeing right now actually isn't in the technology, as I said, but I think McKinsey did a recent report where 90% of people are using this at work, but only 6% of people feel that they have any amount of skill or training. So they're using it at a super basic level. And I think for everyone listening, the important thing is to think, okay, I might be using it for an email, or I might be using it for doing a bit of research, but there is a much, much bigger step up to really achieving the value. And that is actually quite to do with a mindset shift of being able to trust it, of being able to try different things, of having the imagination. So that's what we've tried to do with Atheni, is make that easier for people. And our background is in communication, is in human capital, is in behavioral science. So we're coming at it from the human perspective, not from the tech perspective. We like to think that you need humans to help solve human problems, not technologists. So that's the challenge at the moment, I think, is for people to not to fall into the sense of, oh, I know about this, but to think, what more can I do? Can I try something with AI? And in a sales process or in a marketing process, what if I asked it? What if I uploaded my presentation and asked for some critique? You'll be amazed to see how helpful it can be, particularly if it's configured to know you and your job. And the LLMs are getting much better at knowing you anyway. But the more tailored you can make it, the better the answers. And one example that I did recently, as I held a workshop last week, was grant writing. So for all of the entrepreneurs here, where writing grants or writing proposals, I uploaded all of my Atheni information into a project area in Claude, all of the information about the grant, and I wrote a grant within 6 hours. Okay, now that was not possible to do without grant writing, and it wasn't written without AI. It wasn't written like AI. It was written in my style, from my information, based on the requirement. So this is where I use the analogy. It's like my combine harvester. I think you're going to possibly, I think you know my combine harvester, but my combine harvester is kind of how we need to see it. I'm still a farmer if I use a scythe or if I use a combine harvester. So here's my combine harvester. If you use AI as your combine harvester, it's not just how much quicker you can do things, it's also how much more you can achieve. And you have to shift your mind to think, could I try this? At least try this and see what comes back.
Well, I want to come back to the combine harvester. I've got several things queued up here that I want to ask you about, but you've just beautifully articulated the skills gap, right? 96% using it, 6% properly.
Yeah.
There's the gap. It's 90%, huge gap.
Huge gap.
And where are you seeing the biggest areas? Where is that gap largest? Where shouldn't it be that large? And what are you observing in different industries? What's out there?
Yes, it's really interesting. And at Davos, which was the World Economic Forum that was on a couple of weeks ago, there's a lot of the great and the good talking about the investments they're putting in AI and all of the rest, and the investments they're spending. And the stat from last October from BCG was that 74% of big generative AI projects are failing, and they're failing 70% because of people and process. Only 10 and 20% respectively for algorithms and technology. So, the human side of this is the biggest gap, is the biggest issue. And it isn't about changing the way that we work. It isn't about using a technology like we used Excel. It's about saying this is going to be an entirely different way that we're going to work. And we're going to work in a way which allows us to orchestrate different, whether it's agents or staff members. But if someone is going to hire you, they are going to want to know that you are AI literate. And that means more than just using it to do the odd email. It means that it is integrated completely into your work. And this is where the big gap is right now. It's training up until now. It's either expensive or it's out of date because of the pace of change. Things are going so quickly. It's out of date so fast that you already moved on. So the way that we've done things in the past are not going to work in the future. I was on a call with, I did a training course in the US recently on kind of AI for business leaders from one of the kind of the top leaders, and she had Mustafa Suleiman from Microsoft AI on a fireside chat. And he said the pace of change that we're going to see, so if we look 15 years ahead from now, we are basically looking the equivalent of 45 years ago from where we are today. So that change is coming so fast that traditional training can't really keep up. So this is a big gap for leaders in large organizations who are more worried about security, more worried about all of this, and then dropping the ball. And it's actually a fabulous opportunity for entrepreneurs, for smaller businesses to leapfrog. So if you're in a smaller business, this is a perfect place to say, okay, let me get on with it. Let me find out, let me take my own career, in my own hands. Because actually, if I have a small team, then I can orchestrate everybody, get everybody up to speed, give them the space, give them the encouragement, give them Athene when it comes, and then we can see how we're going to move this forward together. Because it's not something you can leap into as a CEO and suddenly say, well, I now know how to use AI. And the McKinsey report, it's called Super Agency in the Workplace, talks a lot about leaders are the ones blocking this, actually. Leaders aren't being bold enough. Leaders can't imagine how they can reimagine their organizations. Remember Kodak? Remember some of these companies that haven't been able to shift their mindset fast enough. So it is change management is a gap, change and people, and excitement for it, not fear. And the media have propagated a very strong view of kind of like, it's going to take your job. Well, actually, there's something happened in the US last week, which is quite interesting, which was the Copyright Office said you can now copyright human plus AI work. You cannot copyright AI only generated work. So that demonstrates the power of the human plus. So this is how we always say it. It's human plus. See yourself as a force it's a force multiplier. It amplifies what you do, but it does not replace you. Well, not for a long time yet. Is it going to be able to make the sorts of decisions we need to make?
Yeah, as Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And since the dawn of technology, those earliest tools, and when I cast my mind back to reading computer science, and we were looking at human-computer interaction, the earliest kind of interfaces for the web, you could just throw some stuff up there, but actually you needed to understand humans and psychology, and actually understand a human in order to design it well. So it's always that we hope the tool's going to work on its own, but it's always about how we use it. The difference now is that the AI world is so vast and so fast and so powerful that it's orders of magnitude more significant. And I think that's what leads to the CEO blocker, because it's almost like they need their own course on how to bring AI in as a CEO to facilitate this, so they become the bottleneck. So it is rhyming.
Yes.
It's always about the people.
Yes.
It's why I studied psychology as an undergraduate, as well as AI and computer science. And they're famously together. Your background in communications, I think it's fascinating that you've got that, and now you're in a position where you're helping communicate and allowing others to communicate better. And you are a big fan of metaphors. We've had the harvester. I think my favourite, because it chimes with my military family and background, is the jet fighter, where you were quoted in the Financial Times. And they seem to work, these metaphors. What is it about your background and what you're working with now that is enabling you to get that message across?
Well, I think it's true, and I think for me, I'd like to. We at Athene, we're here. We want to be here for everybody. Okay, we're not just here for the top companies, for the lawyers, for the bankers. For us, we're most interested in those people that are going to get left behind. Okay, we want to make sure that nobody gets left behind in this AI revolution, and therefore, some of this, if you tell a story and if you talk about it in a way which people can understand, and it's not that they can't understand what generative AI is, and I'm not trying to be patronizing in any way, it's just like you suddenly get a switch flicked. And it was actually a client of mine many years ago who talked about pensions like this. And he talked about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, or 5, I don't remember, and the perfect storm and all sorts of things, in what was a very dry subject. And I remember back then thinking, and it was at the beginning where storytelling was becoming part of PR, I suppose. And I remember back then thinking, this is so powerful, because suddenly you can understand the magnitude, you can understand what this means. And people think it's quite funny. And actually at the FT, I've been speaking with one of the reporter or the journalist who wrote the piece about predictions, which is where I was quoted. And that the Ferrari metaphor, which is one that I also use quite a lot, has really stuck in her mind, that we've given everyone keys to the Ferrari. It's the most incredibly powerful beast, but we haven't given them any driving lessons. We've just taught them they can't get out the car park. And I think once you realize that actually most people's usage of generative AI right now is right on that first level. And that's great. It's absolutely, but get stuck in. See it as a force multiplier, see it as the thing that's going to allow your business to expand, and use it as that tool. Just like, you're still the farmer, going back to it, or you're still the fighter, but a fighter jet needs a flight plan and it needs a pilot. It's not very much use on its own. And so this is how you have to see this thing. And you need new skills to be able to do it. And those new skills, interestingly, a lot come back to communication skills, because the communication with AI is in your natural language. It's not in code. It's how do you communicate? And I wake up sometimes, it's probably an entrepreneur's thing, at 4 a.m. And where do I reach to now? Instead of my pen and paper, I used to write down the things I was going to forget. I now say to ChatGPT, okay, don't let me forget these things. And I'm having one of those 4 a.m. moments. And it comes back with a whole schedule of things that I need to remember to do today and when to do them, and it puts my mind at rest. So, I think it can get it wrong. It isn't always the right thing, the right tool at the right time, but we're only 2 years in. This is like, Netscape.
Yes.
And if we can all look back, or some of us can look back and remember what the internet was like, a terminal in the middle of the room, that's the sense I think, we need to take.
And in terms of that's awesome. Thank you. In terms of a tip for salespeople, the audience here, what would be your recommendation for salespeople?
So I think for salespeople, there are many, many different tools that you can use as a salesperson. But start with, if you haven't got a pro subscription of ChatGPT, that's the place to start, because actually the free version isn't terribly safe. It is used to train their models. If you have the pro version, you can feel confident, or more confident as you do with Instagram or anything else to use it, and go to Athene, sign up for a configuration. We talk you through how to use that. And then, as I said, there will be a platform which will make it very simple and help you to work out how best to use it. But I think it is about experimentation. We all have day jobs. We don't have a lot of time. I mean, it is my day job, but I think if you go and you look, you start to put in some of your, what you have, your information, and ask it to take that and digest it and repeat it to you, you'll start to build a confidence that it's going to be able to help you. And there's one quite fun tool actually, which is Google has something called Notebook LLM, where you can upload your LinkedIn profile, a big piece of work that you've done, perhaps it's your sales plan, and you have two hosts who talk about it. And you start to understand through that, and they make it really accessible. And then you start to understand the power of what's behind this, and that as humans, if we can harness that power in our sales process, then you can start thinking in hectares. You can start thinking in bigger. You can thinking about more people, but keeping your human feel to it. It shouldn't be AI generated, and it doesn't have to be. If you configure it and you make sure that you chat to it in a way that it starts to learn how you are, it doesn't sound AI generated. So this is the first step, I think. See it as the first step.
And I've found, as I've been moving through my own gears, that actually even doing something small, getting it repeatable and quality, well, that saved me, 10 minutes. And then that time I'm investing into more. So gradually, all of the things that I was doing manually, I'm kind of AI-ifying all of them. And each one is unlocking more time, which I'm using. It becomes
more creatively.
It becomes cumulative. Gartner recently suggested that sellers could generate an additional 27% bandwidth from harnessing AI, and certainly it feels like that to me. It feels like we're building year-long content marketing email newsletter plans over like 2 days, and then getting all the assets and stuff. There's lots of exciting things there, so I'm not surprised. Your sales scoop is use AI for sales. There's loads of tools out there. Atheni. There's the paid platforms. The paid version of ChatGPT. I've been playing recently with the Mini High because it's more powerful for logic. We've been playing with it with coding, trying to make basic HTML things that previous versions weren't with. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. I'm sure you've had a play with DeepSeek.
Yeah, well, actually, funnily enough, it's interesting. I put something up about this on LinkedIn last week. I have, but I feel like I represent most people in the room, when I'm talking about AI. And because I'm a middle-aged mom, I'm not a techie. And I'm, at the moment, and ChatGPT have just come out with the O3, which is as cheap and as quick and as good. So I'm going to stick with that, to be honest, because trust is a big part of this. And this is where I think the sort of the big picture, the disconnect is where things get missed, is that for many people, trust and understanding, we've never had a technology that mimics a human. It's weird. It takes a bit of getting your head around. So for me at the moment, I'm leaving DeepSeek. I'm keeping an eye on it. I'll keep on an eye on it for our clients and for everyone that we talk to, but I don't see any need to use it. I use ChatGPT. I love Claude. Claude for deep work, I really enjoy. It's also extra sort of secure. They have fabulous project areas where you can create, different sales areas, for example, putting different information. That is fantastic. And Gemini is getting better as well. Gemini is quite good. That's the Google one. And then there's all the specialists. So we've been having a go with HeyGen for video generation. We've done 11 Labs for voices. We've done an avatar of me with voice, which we're going to put on some little videos. And I think the point is, where is it important to be authentic as a human? And where is it important that it doesn't matter so much? And I think that's what we've got to move away from. And also in the sales process, what are the things that's really important that you as a human do? And you make that connection with people. And that's going to become more important in an AI world, not less important. And what are the things that I can do that actually it doesn't really matter who does it or whether it's AI generated or not? And there's a lot of stuff in everybody's job that can be done and it doesn't matter, and leaving you to spend more time talking to people. So I think that's my most important point.
Yeah. that there are lots of little tools out there, and it feels like there's a wave coming, and there's little specialists, and there's
Yes.
things you can add on the side. That the kind of the
Yes.
rich tapestry is,
Glass, complete.
yeah, it's really exciting. And from a sales point of view, we have a platform that's in this space, which is called Revenue Coach, which is AI powered sales coaching platform for the price of a coffee, although it's currently free. We've got some very exciting features coming, Louise, including using the QR codes there if anybody wants it, including using AWS's Poly text to voice service in order to create a personalized podcast, like a 2-minute pep talk that tells you which deal you need to go on.
That's great.
And that's really exciting. That's coming down the line too. So we're excited about that. Revenue Coach is still free at the moment. And while I've got you here, love your sales scoop. People should head over to Atheni and check it out, sign up, have a look at the platform, and get ready for the exciting new version.
Yes.
But while I've got you, I didn't want to let you go without tapping you for some kind of founder insights, right? As an exited founder, life is hard for people now raising money, and just generally as a founder.
Mm-hmm.
Have you got any tips or a takeaway tip for founders who are struggling now, or something that kept you going?
I think in my first business, it was really interesting that someone said to me when I was about 3 or 4 years in, and I actually sold the business at 6 years old. And they said, make sure you're always ready for an acquisition if that's what comes along and if that's what you want. And it may not be, but it actually changes your mindset somewhat to making sure that your scrappy business, however it is tight. And so everything from our legal contracts to our employment contracts to our accounting was tight, was super tight, so anyone could come along. And in the end, then when I did say, okay, I've now got 3 small children and it's time for me to move and do something different, I had 3 offers because I looked very professional before we'd even started. So that was my tip that I gave everyone, is make sure that you're ready. And then also the second one, I think, for people now is think big. Think big. Don't think small, think big. We've got to, if we want to compete on the world stage and whatever we do, we've got to think big. And that's what I'm doing as a 54-year-old middle-aged woman who's come back into the workplace after some time off. I'm not going to take no for an answer. So think big and believe in yourself, because, we all wake up at 4 in the morning wondering how we're going to do the next thing, but that's normal. And there's lots of people around. So build that community.
And leverage AI, right, to think big. Leverage
AI, absolutely.
Atheni.ai, leverage that platform.
Yes, we are a small team, and what's really interesting in our fundraising process right now is trying to persuade people that actually we don't need that many more people to be able to do what we're doing. Okay, imagine that we actually don't need that much because we are leveraging it to the hilt. Okay, so the whole business model, the whole future of the business model is changing. So if you can keep up with that, and as a smaller business particularly, leapfrog your bigger competitors because they can't move so fast, do it. Leverage AI.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've run, big 600-person companies, and actually I don't think for the Revenue Coach offering we'd ever grow more than 10 people as a kind of AI-powered SaaS business. Louise, that's fantastic. Thank you. Great advice for founders generally. If anybody watching or listening is struggling as a founder themselves, they could download our latest white paper. It's just 12 pages short. It's called The Empowered Founder Seller. You can get that at our website at theupliftpartnership.com, or you can scan this QR code and download it. It is 100% focused with 62 practical takeaways for founders to become more confident and empowered as a founder seller. Our next show is a week today. It's back to Kieran and I, and we're chatting through, Louise, 7 things investors need to see in sales before they buy. So I'm, might tap you up before then, what your 2 or 3 might be. And if anybody is interested in the previous shows, they can head over to thesalescoop.com and watch previous recordings. That's it for today. Louise Ballard. Louise, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
Thanks
Alistair.
for coming on and talking to us all about Atheni.ai. And I will be reposting and sharing your content and your mission in order to bridge that gap, that 90% gap that we've got in AI literacy.
Yeah, and we're going to do it. We're going to do it. The government are on board. We're going to do it. So I think we need to make sure that everybody just shifts their mind to think, oh, let's turn myself into that combine harvester.
Focus on the people and change that mindset. Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you, Louise. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.